If you want to get jacked and you're not sure how, you want to learn some shit, then you're in the right place. There's something extremely corny and chill like that, maybe. Hopefully, you guys can hear me. I forgot my mic and I can't be bothered to go get it. Haven't used that thing since I was at school, which was over a month ago at this point, which is nuts. But I'm going to show you how to program an upper lower split totally free. Shouldn't be doing this for free, but who gives a fuck? I said every cornball coach ever. Okay. Seriously, though, I'm going to show you, as you can see here, if you can see my mouse, multiple different potential structures to this. I'll talk about why, the pros and cons of each. Talk about if we should we do upper A, upper B, that sort of thing. Talk about that. I'll show you how to actually do this, why I do everything, so you guys can actually learn and not just like copy paste, follow this program type of thing. That way you guys can actually apply this to your own training. Yeah, that's one of the main things that I try to do with my clients, with my content, is actually teach people how to think for themselves and how to actually apply things, not just blindly copy them, because it doesn't really get people anywhere, especially not long term, especially when you got different circumstances, blah, blah, blah. No one gives a fuck. Let's get into it. So starting with these structures. So the most common one you're going to see is just upper, lower, rest, upper, lower, rest, rest. So this could be, usually it's like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, rest, Thursday, Friday, and then people like to take the weekend off. I was never a fan of that because my weekends are usually like, especially when I'm at school, that's usually when I have more time. So I like to actually train as least often as possible during the week, especially when I'm at school. When I'm at home during the summer, it's a little bit different depending on my schedule. I have fucking 3 different jobs, so it's a bit weird, but yeah. And then this is my preferred approach, what I'm currently running right now, which I just switched to. I was running full body for a long time, and that shit was just getting too much. But you'll see why in a second, why I'm doing this and why I was running full body actually. Hold on. So this one, instead of doing upper lower rest, upper lower rest, rest, we're doing upper lower rest and then upper rest lower rest. So you can see we have an extra rest day between these second sessions here, right? The reason for this is because subsequent workouts like this, back-to-back days, this upper day here can have negative effects on this lower day here. You might think like, I just hit upper body, my lower body's fresh, but there's something called central nervous system fatigue, meaning it affects your entire body because your central nervous system coordinates and controls your muscles, everything. So if there is fatigue there, it's going to affect your entire body. Should make sense, right? So now we'll talk about how to mitigate that and things of that nature. But this is something you might want to experiment with, and that actually segues perfectly into this one, which is just straight up upper rest, lower rest, repeat, just every other day, upper, lower, much like people will do full body every other day, except this is just upper rest, lower rest. I actually ran this last year for a good bit, and it worked pretty well. I found myself feeling a lot better going to each session, just felt a lot more fresh. My programming wasn't as good back then. My technique was nowhere near as good. Like a lot of things weren't as good as they are now, so it's hard to compare it necessarily, but I did very much enjoy this, and I do 100% notice a difference when I train subsequent sessions like this, which is why I'm doing this one, because I do want to have it fit in a 7-day period, which is the downside of this one, is that it's not a 7-day split. It's an 4-day or 8-day split, depending on how you look at it, meaning it's going to change. Like, you're going to be training on different days each week, which I do not like because of my schedule with work. If you have a flexible schedule, if you're fucking unemployed, which you probably are if you're watching this, then do whatever you want with that. You're going to have more flexibility, obviously, so this can work great for you. There's just something you have to experiment with. See, do you notice a difference when you train back-to-back days or not at all? I think there is, and just explain real quick, like physiologically what's happening is in this workout, your upper day, you could also do lower, upper, rest, repeat, which if you were trying to prioritize lower, you probably would want to do that. The downside of that, which is going into what I'm about to explain, is that lower days are typically more taxing overall. So that might have even more of an effect if you were to do that before your upper day, if that makes sense. But basically, in this upper day, we're going to be creating some peripheral fatigue. Peripheral meaning like at the muscle level rather than the central nervous system level, right? We'll just keep it simple and say we're creating muscle damage. It seems like muscle damage is actually created by when there is an influx and accumulation of calcium ions within muscle fibers. This then signals a chemical response. These things called calpains, they're basically enzymes that just like rape the fucking inside your muscles and just fuck them up. They cause a bunch of damage. That's what muscle damage is. It seems to work that way potentially in the research. Doesn't really matter if that's actually how it works. Regardless, this will happen after your workout if you accumulated a lot of calcium ions within your workout, which I'll talk about in a second. Once again, holy fuck, say that one more time and I'm gonna fucking kill you. Okay. Holy shit. Anyways, I'm losing it already. Okay, so you create that calcium ion accumulation that causes muscle damage. It seems like, once again, that this muscle damage then causes an inflammatory response in order to like repair that muscle damage. I don't know, I was about to say heal. In order to repair that muscle damage, it seems like this inflammatory response, the inflammatory markers, all that shit, leaks into the bloodstream and can then be detected by your brain, which is what causes this supraspinal, above the spine, meaning the brain, central nervous system fatigue effect, meaning you have less output overall, basically, in very general terms. I don't really want to nerd out right now. I kind of do, but I'm going to hold myself back so I can actually get into the nitty gritty, the practical shit here, because who cares about all this bullshit? Am I right, guys? Fuck you. Okay. So that's why not doing subsequent sessions can be beneficial theoretically, and whether it actually makes a difference for you, you just got to try it out. Like I said, I highly recommend trying this out. This is a great way to test it out without having to do this. One of the benefits of this one is that you would say that there's less frequency there. You're not hitting each muscle twice a week, right? You're hitting it like 1.75 times, whatever the fuck, like once every 4 days, whatever it is, because it's an 8-day. You're hitting it twice over an 8-day period. First of all, that 1 day difference, that's not gonna make a difference, realistically speaking. Secondly, you can, if you have certain muscles that you want to prioritize, you can actually do them every single session, basically. So you can do them every other day. That way you're getting that 3.5 times frequency on those specific priority muscles. So you're basically running like a full body every other day, except you're not training every single muscle group every other day. So your sessions aren't going to be like fucking 3 hours long. But like there's flexibility there. I actually did this as well. Like I think I was prioritizing like my arms and my legs, so my limbs, which is pretty much what I'm always prioritizing. But I think what I was doing, I would do my upper day, and then at the end of it, I would do like a set of leg extensions, a set of leg curls, a set of calves, maybe, if I had that much time. And then on my lower days, at the end, I would just do like a set of curls and a set of push downs, something like that. I think I was doing a little bit too much, and I wasn't really recovering from it. But if I knew what I knew now, then I think I could probably pull that off pretty well, considering I was just running full body for so long, and it was going pretty well. So I mean, yeah, I could probably do that, and you could probably do that. But yeah, that's just another potential thing you could do there. Now, in terms of A and B days, last thing before we get into the actual program, this is mainly theory, but we generally would not want to do A and B days in that we want to repeat similar enough movements each time, like twice a week. I've talked about why frequency is important. I'll try to explain it real quick. In very simple terms, more frequency means we get more first sets. So the first set that you do for a muscle group in a workout and the first set overall in a workout is going to be the most stimulating, most likely, because there was the least amount of fatigue present. And therefore, each subsequent set that you do will be less stimulating than the one prior because we are building up fatigue. Now, so this is why if you do, instead of doing like 3 sets once a week, where those second and third sets were less stimulating than that first one, you could do 1 set 3 times a week. That way you get more of a stimulus, basically more of those first sets, so more high quality sets overall, in very simple terms. And the other reason is that based on how muscles grow and shrink, it seems like muscle fibers are kind of always in a state of either growing or shrinking, and the only way they're going to grow is if we mechanically load them, if we stimulate them to grow in the gym or with like walking and things like that. That's only going to stimulate the lower threshold fibers. But when we train more frequently, we basically spend more time growing and less time shrinking. There's less time between sessions. You don't have to do as much volume. That's why like we have research showing us that like 3 sets once a week is only enough to maintain muscle, whereas 1 set twice a week is enough to grow it. Probably a mix of what I said about the first set thing, as well as the fact that we're not spending as much time shrinking. Therefore, like you're just being more efficient. Like you're not doing all this work just to basically, it's kind of like dieting super hard just to like binge out on the weekend versus just like being in a more like eating a more moderate amount, being more locked in overall, being more consistent, if that makes sense. I don't really know if that was a good analogy. I just kind of thought of that right now, but hopefully it was. So yeah. So that's why higher frequency is good. The same idea applies with repeating movements, because we want to get the benefit of that higher frequency within every muscle group, every muscle fiber that we're trying to train, because muscle hypertrophy, muscle growth is muscle fiber specific. It happens at the individual fiber level, not the muscle level. Again, muscle fibers make up a muscle. You can think of this like the individual players that make up a team, like fucking Wembanyama and all those fuckers, and Jalen Brunson and OG and all those fuckers. Those are the muscle fibers, whereas the Knicks and the Spurs are the teams, right? Crazy game last night, by the way. Holy fuck. Anyways, so yeah. So when we do different exercises, we're theoretically training different muscle fibers depending on how different these exercises are. Like let's say I do an incline press. This is always the example I use because it's probably the most most commonly butchered one. It's also just the easiest one to understand. Let's say I do an incline press and I do a flat fly or press. In the incline press, I'm hopefully going to be training more of the upper pec fibers, right? Whereas in the flat press or fly, I'm going to be training more of the kind of whole chest overall, but mainly the mid to lower pecs, let's just say. So there's going to be certain fibers in those two movements that are exclusive to each movement, meaning they're only being trained in those movements and not the other. So if I were to do an incline press on my upper A day and then a flat press on my upper B day, I would basically only be getting a 1 times frequency on those exclusive fibers, right? So I'd kind of be not necessarily wasting my time, but kind of in theory you are wasting your time if you're trying to bias multiple regions. Like if you're only doing like 2 sets, it's going to be pretty hard to grow off that, to actually grow those fibers, I should say. You can absolutely still grow, but if we're talking about like actually growing these fibers, this stuff only really matters when you're more advanced. Like the more advanced you are, the more this matters, because the less room you have to grow, the more like it's actually going to matter to recruit these higher threshold motor units, higher threshold muscle fibers. So yeah, this mainly matters for the more advanced you are, but it still matters if we want to just work efficiently and train efficiently, train smart. Now, with all that said, the reason why it's not too big of a deal is because similar enough movements will basically be training the same fibers, so it's just not that deep in some cases. Now, you just kind of have to know what you're doing in order to judge this. But like in that example, those are two movements that aren't similar enough. Whereas if I were doing like a flat press and a flat fly, you could argue obviously there's going to be a little bit of a difference, but realistically it's going to be very similar fibers you're training, because you're training the same main muscle action, which is horizontal adduction, bringing the arm across the body. So you could theoretically alternate between something like that. Another example I like to use, this is probably a better one, is like doing a preacher curl on one day and doing like a cable curl or dumbbell curl or something like that. Now, the fucking nerd loser science-based lifter, I almost said a bad word there, but losers would say that like, oh, the preacher curl biceps the brachialis, you're tripping. No, shut up, dude. They're all training all 3 elbow flexors, pretty much the same, most likely. There's very minimal evidence to support the fact that there's going to be a huge difference in either of those. None of you need to worry about that if you're watching this, so just fuck off, please. Sorry, but like that's a good example in my opinion, where like, and that's something that I'll do in some cases. Now, there's also the downside of that. There's upsides and downsides of that. The upside is that you get some variety, which can be good for enjoyment, adherence, etc. The downside is that it can be harder to track your progress because you only get one shot at it a week, especially if you're doing like lower volume, which you probably are, which we'll get to that in a second. How about you fuck off? Stop looking at me. Okay, sorry. So yeah, I think I've yapped enough about that. But so the key is doing similar enough movements twice a week. How about that, huh? Does that work? Okay. So I'm just gonna change this real quick. Hold on. Saturday, I think. Just to theoretically do like the one that I'm doing. Okay, now let's actually get into the shit. So the order that you're going to go in here is going to be up to you. I have a preference mainly for my lower days that I'm going to show you and explain why. But I'm just going to run through like the most common way you'll do this here. Again, exercise order, especially for the upper body, is mainly going to come down to just priority and preference. So take what that you will, go in whatever order you want. But let's say we're going to do a flat press. This is my preferred approach here, okay? I'm going to say flat press or fly. We're going to do 2 sets of most things, just to keep it simple. In terms of volume, I've talked about that a million times. Go watch my other video about how to write your own program. It's very similar to this, except this is more specific to this, like this exact thing, obviously, like upper lower split. I might have actually done this in that video, I'm not going to lie. I think I did like a example walkthrough. I don't remember. Definitely didn't go in this much detail, but anyways, I'll probably touch more on the volume at the end. But so we'll do a flat press and fly, or fly, I should say. And then this one, it's up to you depending on your priorities and stuff. My favorite approach here is to combine basically, theoretically you would want to do a flat press, some kind of incline press or fly, and then a like frontal plane shoulder press. Practically, I think that's doing it too much you're going to be doing like 9 exercises total, I think, if you were to do that. So what I like to do is just a flat press or fly, and then more of like a neutral grip, elbows more tucked in, like shoulder press basically. This way we're going to be getting a ton of upper pec and front delt. So we're basically combining our front delt and upper pec movement there. Now you're also going to get a ton of front delt, well, depending on how you do it, but you're also likely going to get a lot of front delt in your flat press or fly. But so theoretically you would want to do more of a frontal plane shoulder press to take out the upper chest here. But this is my preferred approach. I'm just going to say neutral grip press. I'll say like 1 to 2 sets. And then we'll do a lat pull down. Let's say 1 to 2 sets. And then we're going to do a T-bar row / Kelso shrug for 1 to 2 reps, or 1 to 2 sets. Then we're going to do a lat, I'm going to say sagittal pull for 1 to 2 sets. Usually I like to do just 1 set of a sagittal pull, 1 set of a frontal plane pull down. Will we be actually training different fibers with this? Likely a little bit, yeah. Is it significant enough to care? Maybe not. I was running just T-bar rows and lat pull downs for a long time, and I've been growing quite well with that, but theoretically it does make sense to train both main functions of the lats, which is why I would prefer to just do 1 set of each. You could probably do 2 sets of each and recover fine, or maybe 1 set of one of them, 2 sets of another. It's also cool to take advantage of, usually with the sagittal pull, you'll want to do like some kind of unilateral variation, which is just a good idea to train like different functions like that, if you get what I'm saying. So that's what I would do there. And then we're going to do a lateral raise of choice for 2 sets. And then we're just going to do curl of choice, push down of choice, 2 sets each, 2 sets each, bang. In terms of intensity, usually I like the either 1 RAR both sets, or we'll do 1 RAR first set, 0 second set. Depends on your training age. If you're somebody who's prone to kind of stopping yourself early, if you have the skill to train close to failure with good technique, etc., etc. I'm just going to leave that blank for now. This is just, by the way, this is like the sheets that I use with my clients, and you can say if you progressed, if you maintain, regressed, whatever. So yeah, this is how I would set this up. This is 8 exercises, it should be, I believe. Yeah, so again, you could argue if you need the 2 different lat movements. You could argue about T-bar row versus Kelso shrug. You could argue about the chest movements here. You could also throw in like a pull over to target more of the lower pecs theoretically. This is what I think most people should do, like bang for your buck. If you're somebody who's more of a beginner, I would probably you could take out this movement, you could take out this movement, you could cut it down to just 6 exercises. There's so many ways to skin a cat here. This is just like the general recommendation I would do. Right now, this is exactly what I'm doing, minus the neutral grip press, just because can't be bothered to do that right now. I kind of had to shorten my exercise variety up because I was running full body and I've been having health problems and all these things, so it's been tricky for me, but this is probably a great thing to cover all your bases here. If you guys have questions about specific things, just drop them in the comments. I can only cover so much here. We're already 20 minutes in, so yeah, forgive me for that. But now we'll get into legs. So my preferred approach here is to start with calves. We likely want to do a straight leg calf press variation, because when we bend the knee like in a seated calf raise, the gastrocnemius, which is the bigger calf muscle, it attaches to the knee and the ankle. It's a biarticular muscle, meaning it attaches to 2 different joints. So when we flex the knee, you're actually shortening the gastroc, because it flexes the knee, it attaches to the knee, and it flexes it. So when you're flexed at the knee, like when you're seated, you're shortening it at the knee, and then when you go to actually do the rep and plantar flex, you're shortening it at the ankle now too, right? So you're getting potentially active insufficiency, which is what happens when you shorten a biarticular muscle at both joints, and basically there's minimal overlap of the actin and myosin, which is what is actually happening at the most like functional level within the muscle fiber. Don't worry about that. But so for that reason, you likely want to do a straight leg calf press. Now there could be some merit to doing a seated calf raise, because you can work on tibial rotation. Now that's for another time. We're not getting into biomechanics like that right now, so don't worry about that. But I like to start with calves first, because 1, try hitting quads and then doing a straight leg calf variation. You're gonna be shaking like fucking Sally got piped. I have no clue what the fuck. I was trying to do some kind of like rhyme there. I just fucked it. But you're gonna be shaking like Parkinson's. Okay, that was uncalled for, man. Come on. You're a physical therapy aide and you're talking about, okay, shut up, dude. Oh my gosh. But you're gonna be shaking like a motherfucker. It's gonna be very hard to stabilize and get good reps. Secondly, most people skip their fucking calves because they do them at the end and then they're like, fuck this, I'm tired as fuck, I'm gonna go home. The same thing with abs. You'll try to do them at the end and then you're like, fuck this, because you're gassed by the end of it. Thirdly, most people have shit calves, including myself. My calves are fucking laughable. So any chance I can get to grow them a little bit better, I'm gonna take it. So doing them first is smart. Fourthly, you're gonna probably be more mobile for your squat pattern coming up. So that's 4 reasons why I like to do them first. I would highly recommend doing them first, but it's not really that deep either way. But yeah, then I like to do, assuming we want to prioritize our quads over our hamstrings, I like to do these 2 movements first, because the fact that they are going to be the most hypertrophic movements we have for our quads and hamstrings, most likely because they're single joint. They're purely training and isolating those muscle actions of knee extension and knee flexion. Whereas in like our hinges and our squats, we've got multiple muscle groups working depending on our execution. Multiple muscle groups working. We're also going to be missing out on like the rectus femoris is not going to be trained too well in a squat pattern, most likely. And you might potentially be missing out on some of the biceps femoris short head in the hip hinge because it only attaches to the knee. So for those reasons, these are most likely going to be the most hypertrophic movements you can do. So it makes sense to prioritize them. They're also not as cardiovascularly demanding as a squat or a hinge. Try doing those at the start of your session. The rest of your session is likely going to be cooked because you're fucking fried, or you're going to have to take like 10 minutes to recover afterwards, most likely. So doing them towards the end instead is what I've found to work best, and it makes the most sense physiologically speaking. Another reason is that these are more short in position movements as opposed to the other ones, which are more length in position movements, which will theoretically cause more both intra-workout and post-workout fatigue, peripheral fatigue. The muscle damage mainly happens post-workout, but there's other things like excitation, contraction, coupling failure. Don't worry about that. But a bunch of peripheral fatigue going on that can happen within the workout itself, it seems like. And those happen more so from length in position movements because there's more of that calcium ion accumulation. So again, that's another reason why I like to put the squat and hinge later on in the session. Now, doing a squat and a hinge back in the same session is a lot. And you might want to do those even later on, like at the very end. Or you might want to do like your squat and then maybe do like your adductors to kind of give yourself a little bit of a break and then do a hinge. Just for simplicity, I'm just going to put it like this. Whoops. And then we're going to throw in a hip thrust. I think don't sleep on glutes, my friends. We'll do, say, 1 to 2 sets of that. 2 sets here, 1 set here. I like to, in most cases, this is how I do it. I'm more flexible with volume in terms of the upper body, just because especially if we're doing like, there's so many different ways to program it. Whereas here, this is what I found to work best. I find 2 sets of a squat, like you're probably not getting too much out of that second set. In a lot of cases, if you already did 2 sets of leg extensions as well, like you're going to be fried at that point. Even if you are getting a lot out of it, like it's going to cook the rest of your workout most likely, especially if you're doing a squat and a hinge in both in the same session. Now, something that you could do here is you could alternate. You could do a squat one day, a hinge the other day. Now, again, this isn't ideal from a hypertrophy perspective because, like I explained, we want to repeat similar enough movements, right? But in this case, you could argue that theoretically, the main benefits of like the squat specifically is that we get the additional stretch gains in the vasty muscles because they attach only to the knee compared to the rectus femoris. I just made a video about that. It did really well for some reason, but theoretically, it seems like those stretch gains, the stretch-mediated hypertrophy, the sarcomerogenesis, the addition of sarcomeres in series rather than in parallel, that adaptation seems to require less frequency to maintain, if that makes sense. So like you could probably get away with doing it like once a week. And well, I didn't really explain that well, but basically we're just kind of trying to maintain those adaptations. We can't really progress them that much unless we're continually getting more and more range of motion over time, which is going to be very hard to do in normal resistance training sets. You would kind of have to do like static stretching where you're really pushing the needle more and more. So we mainly just want to maintain those adaptations, right? Now, it's a lot easier to maintain gains than it is to grow, right? Which is why doing like a 1 times frequency for those movements can be smart because we just want to maintain those adaptations. So we only really need to do them like once a week, theoretically, to maintain those adaptations, right? So hopefully that makes sense. Now, I would generally recommend still to try to do it like this if you can. It can also just take a long time. But yeah, so this is a lower day to cover all your bases. Like this is an awesome lower day. If you want to take it even further, like if you really care about your glutes, you would do some form of abduction as well. Or you would also do some kind of, you could argue like the hinge will give you some length and position glutes, some length and position glute work. You'd probably want to do something with like a unilateral component, potentially like a B stance RDL. You're also going to be getting some pelvic stability, pelvic rotation work in there, which can be beneficial for other reasons. 2, we're getting too much. We're getting too deep here. So for now, we'll say this is a great lower day to follow. Hopefully my reasoning for everything made sense. I probably skipped over some shit here. Now, I would just repeat these same things here. So I'm literally just going to copy and paste these. Again, I will show you what this could look like. Hold on. So you could, like if you wanted to do maybe like, you want to do a pendulum squat on this day and then a hack squat on this day just for like enjoyment purposes, whatever, totally valid. If you want to do like, I don't know, a 45-degree extension on this day and then like a RDL on this day, again, not ideal, but there's similar enough movements in most cases that you could get away with it. Again, it's theoretically going to be most likely better to repeat the same exercises and just to keep it simple, to just repeat the same workouts, to not have like an A and B day, but it can be done is the point. I think it looks like I fucked something up here, but yeah, whatever. So yeah, and then you could also, like, if you want to do a flat press on this day and then a fly on this day, like little things like that, you just have to know enough about like what you're doing. Is it similar enough to the other movements that I can kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Not mix and match. I guess mix and match. There's a different word I'm looking for, but I can't think of it. We'll say mix and match. You kind of just have to know what you're doing, like biomechanically. Again, you don't have to worry too much about like getting so deep about it, because it's not that deep realistically. Especially if you're watching this video, you're probably, say, like beginner, intermediate, whatever. Even if you're advanced, I mean, again, if you want to go down that rabbit hole, you totally can. I'm all for the theory. Clearly, I spend a lot of time trying to understand this shit, but for most people, it's really just not that deep. But if you want it to be that deep, I can help you out. If you want to, I do consultation calls. Just DM me about that, where I can like write you a program, or I can review your program on a call. I can answer any of your questions, that sort of thing. Or I also do coaching, which is going to be, you're going to get a lot more benefit out of that, because the programming stuff, honestly, the more I learn about all this stuff, and the more I actually coach people, and the more I kind of dip my feet in the water of like different things like biomechanics, execution, these different things, I realize that the programming only matters so much. Like what we do only matters so much. How we do it is what really matters in a lot of cases. And I think a lot of people focus too much on this stuff, on the programming, and not enough on the execution, which is one of the main benefits of having a coach, is that they can help you with the execution. And yeah, anyways, I'm not trying to sell you guys on that. If you're interested in coaching, I'll put the link in the bio, in the description, whatever. You can apply there. You can DM me if you don't know, like if you're just curious about details, whatever. If you're considering it, just DM me. No big deal. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Not a big deal at all. Happy to help you guys in whatever way I can. Drop questions in the comments. Drop whatever you want to see next. I want to try to bring these back frequently now. I've got some energy here finally. So yeah, man. Hopefully this is helpful. Please ask questions in the comments. I know I definitely brushed over some shit and didn't explain it, or it didn't make sense. I sounded like a retard, whatever it was. Drop questions in the comments. DM me questions on Instagram if you have them, as long as they're not like too specific to your specific situation. But yeah, man, I just want to help you guys out. Hopefully this was helpful. Let me know if I should do like a full body version or a push-pull legs upper lower version, because I just recently programmed that for one of my clients and I made a video about it, and that one is a bit more complicated because of some of these things like repeating movements. It can just be a little bit harder to program. So yeah, let me know. I'm done yapping. I'm tired. So yeah, peace out, fuckers. Bye. I don't know.